My name is Tiffany, and things started to go wrong when I was just 17 years old. I grew up in what I believed to be a fairly typical family. There I was with my 10-year-old younger brother and our parents. My grandpa had started the family firm from the ground up, and Dad was a manager there. It all began with a network of coffee shops, which developed into this significant, high-end coffee enterprise. You know, Grandpa was a tremendous go-getter. However, he didn't simply sell the company or let it go when he made the decision to retire. No, it was his offer to Mom. I recall hearing that talk overheard. "Let John handle it. I'm happy being a housewife," Mom said in a voice as plain as day. That was the end of it. After Dad took over, things continued. I didn't become aware of the gaps in our family's foundation until I was in my teens. Dad and Mom started fighting more and more. Mom was critical of everything Dad did or did not do. She seemed to be attempting to agitate him and test his limits. And she'd play the victim until he'd ultimately crack and raise his voice. She would cry to everyone who would listen, "See how he treats me. He yells at me, and all I'm trying to do is keep this family together." I was at a loss for what to think. Despite my affection for both of my parents, I could not stand to see them fight so much. Although my brother was too little to fully comprehend what was going on, I could always see the terror and bewilderment in his eyes when Mom and Dad got into a fight. Everything came to a head one night. A crash occurred as I was in my room attempting to use music to block out their most recent disagreement. With my pulse pounding, I dashed downstairs to discover a scene that would forever alter my life. Dad was standing over Mom, who was lying on the floor. He hit me. She screamed. Dad had a desperate expression. Tiffany, I didn't touch her. I was attempting to help her up when she fell. However, Mom had already picked up the phone to dial the cops. I was paralyzed in place, unsure of who to trust or how to go. I had the impression that everything in my universe was crumbling around me. I will never forget the night the cops took my father away. I was restless and had a lot of questions in my head. What actually took place? Could Dad really hit Mom? If he didn't lie, why would Mom do it? The days that followed were a haze. Mom dropped the complaint in an act of what she termed kindness, and Dad was freed without being charged. However, the harm had already been done. There was too much stress in our home. With unrelenting intensity, Mom portrayed Dad as this monster who had been torturing her for years. When Dad wasn't there, she would say to me, "He's always had a temper. I have shielded Tommy and you from the worst of it." The divorce proceeded more quickly than I could comprehend. Dad was packing his only luggage one day, feeling disoriented in his own house. With a broken voice, he apologized to the children. "I swear, I'll make this right." However, how was he able to? After the divorce, Mom inherited everything, including the house, the vehicle, and even Dad's job at the firm. There was nothing left for him. Tommy and I were seated for a family meeting by Mom after Dad departed. "Now things will be different," she remarked, grinning but without showing her eyes. "We're safe. Your father can't harm us anymore." "Young and knave," Tommy said, "but when is Dad coming home?" Mom mustered another grin, but her face tightened for a moment. "Oh, sweetie, we'll be fine without Dad. He needs some time to work on himself." I couldn't get rid of the sensation that something wasn't quite right, but Mom would always brush me off when I attempted to challenge her account of what happened. "Tiffany, you're too young to understand," she would sneer. "Relationships between adults are complex." Then just 2 months after the split, Mom made another shocking revelation. She said, "Kids, I have wonderful news," one evening. I am getting hitched. I was taken aback. Wed? However, just 2 months have passed since. Mom cut in. I know it seems fast, but you just know when you find true love. It was love at first sight between Robert and me. I was feeling ill. How could she get over this so fast? How about Dad? How about us? Not long after, my new stepfather Robert arrived in. He appeared to get along well with Tommy, so I think he was all right. He didn't really pay much attention to me. I felt even more alone when I heard them giggling and playing video games together. In the meantime, Mom took over the family business and hired Robert to work with her. They were constantly discussing business and plotting, and Tommy and I kind of got lost in the mix. I was disoriented and stuck between this new, unsettling reality and my memories of our family's past. I wondered where I belonged in now, and what actually occurred between Mom and Dad as I watched Mom and Robert swoon over one another at the dinner table, and Tommy cheerfully talking away. Mom dumped another bombshell on us just when I thought things couldn't be any more confusing. She and Robert made the decision to relocate the company's headquarters to a new location that was claimed to have better financial prospects. All of the capital was going to be moved to this new subsidiary. I didn't give it much thought at first. Moving would be awful, but at least our family would be together, right? False. My mother knocked on my door one evening as I was in my room finishing my schoolwork. You know Robert and I are moving for work, Tiffany. Honey. Yes, when are we leaving? I asked, visualizing packed my room already. Mom's lip twisted into something I didn't quite understand. That's the issue, my dear. We decided that because you are almost done with high school and the new house isn't very spacious, it may be best if you stayed here. It was as though I had taken a hit to the belly. Remain in this place. However, Tommy is another story. Mom spoke hurriedly. Tommy needs us more because he's younger. Furthermore, you wouldn't want to switch schools just before a test, would you? We believe that having you live with your granddad is better. I was hearing things that I couldn't believe. I was going to be left behind by them. But Mom, I want to be with you and Tommy. Can't we find a bigger place? Mom's voice turned stern. Tiffany, this has already been decided. It's for the best, trust me. And just like that, my world turned upside down again. Within weeks, Mom, Robert, and Tommy were gone, and I was moving in with Grandpa. Don't get me wrong, Grandpa's great, but I felt abandoned, cast aside like I didn't fit into their new perfect family. My 18th birthday rolled around soon after. I hoped, foolishly perhaps, that Mom and Robert would come back for it. But no, they were too busy with work to make it. Grandpa, bless him, threw me a party and let me invite my friends. It wasn't the same, but I appreciated his effort. The morning after my birthday, Grandpa called me into his home office. He had this serious look on his face as he handed me a small folder. "Happy birthday, Tiffany," he said, a twinkle in his eye. "This is my gift to you now that you're of age." Confused, I opened the folder and started reading the documents inside. My jaw dropped as I realized what I was holding. "Grandpa, this." He nodded, smiling. "That's right, kiddo, I'm giving you the company." I was speechless, me running a whole company at 18. "But Grandpa, I don't know the first thing about running a business." He chuckled. "You've got potential, Tiffany. I see it in you. You'll learn, and I know you'll do great things." Then his face turned serious again. "There's one more thing. I think you should reconcile with your father. Take him on as a consultant. He knows the business, and well, I think there are some things you need to hear from him." I hesitated. After everything Mom had said about Dad, I wasn't sure I wanted to see him, but Grandpa had never steered me wrong before. I met Dad at a small cafe downtown, my stomach in knots as I approached our table. I saw him stand up, a hesitant smile on his face. He looked older, more worn down than I remembered. "Tiffany," he said, his voice warm but cautious. "I understand you're angry. Your mother probably told you a lot of things about me." "Yeah, she did," I snapped. "How you were abusive, how you hit her." "How could you, Dad?" He took a deep breath. "Tiffany, what your mother told you is not true. I need you to listen to what really happened." For the next hour, Dad laid out a story that shook me to my core. He explained how Mom had deliberately provoked him, pushing his buttons until he was at his wit's end. The night I saw her on the floor, she had staged the whole thing. "Your mother took the police statement back in exchange for me not claiming any property in the divorce," Dad said, his voice heavy with pain. "She set me up, Tiffany. She wanted everything, and she got it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But why would Mom do that? And why didn't you fight back? Dad reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "Because of this," he said, pressing play on an audio file. Mom's voice filled the air between us, cold and calculating. "John, here's the deal. You leave quietly, sign over everything to me, and I'll drop the charges. Fight me on this, and I'll make sure everyone believes you're an abuser. Your choice." I felt sick. "Dad, why didn't you use this in court? You could have proved your innocence." He shook his head sadly. "It wouldn't have changed the outcome, Tiffany. Your mother had made up her mind. But more importantly, I didn't want to put you through any more pain. You were already dealing with so much in your teenage years. You need support, not more family drama." Tears welled up in my eyes. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I should have known. I should have trusted you." Dad reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm sorry too. I know I worked too much when you were younger. I should have been there more." We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the weight of everything that had been said. Then, wiping my eyes, I remembered why I had originally reached out. "Dad, there's something else I need to tell you," I said, my voice shaky but determined. "Grandpa gave me the company for my 18th birthday." Dad's eyes widened in surprise, then crinkled with pride. "Tiffany, that's incredible. Your grandfather always had a good eye for potential. He must see great things in you." I felt a warmth spread through my chest at his words. "But Dad, I don't know the first thing about running a company. I need help." Without hesitation, Dad smiled. "I'd be honored to help you, free of charge. I'll guide you through everything you need to know." As we continued talking, making plans for the future, I felt a mix of emotions. Anger at Mom for her deception, sadness for what our family had lost, but also hope. Hope that with Dad's help and Grandpa's faith in me, maybe I could turn this unexpected gift into something amazing. The months flew by as I settled into my new life with Grandpa. Before I knew it, I was donning a cap and gown, graduating high school with honors. It felt surreal walking across that stage without Mom, Robert, or Tommy in the audience, but Grandpa's proud face and Dad's supportive presence made up for it. With graduation behind me, I threw myself into preparing for college. Thanks to my grades and extracurricular activities, I managed to secure a full scholarship. I decided to major in business management. After all, I had a company to run now. The day I got my acceptance letter, Grandpa insisted on throwing a little celebration. Just the two of us, some cake and a toast to the future. We were in the middle of our second slice when the doorbell rang. Grandpa frowned. "Were you expecting anyone?" I shook my head, equally confused. When Grandpa opened the door, I nearly dropped my plate. There stood Mom and Robert, looking as if they owned the place. Mom barely glanced at me. Her eyes were fixed on Grandpa, her expression stormy. "Dad, we need to talk." Now, without waiting for an invitation, she strode into the living room, Robert trailing behind her. I watched, stunned, as she rounded on Grandpa. "Why can't I access the company accounts?" she demanded. "And who gave you the right to block the capital transfer to our new subsidiary?" Grandpa stood his ground, his voice calm but firm. "Sarah, the company no longer belongs to you. It's Tiffany's now." Mom's jaw dropped. For a moment, she looked like a fish out of water. Then her eyes narrowed, darting between Grandpa and me. "What do you mean it's Tiffany's?" she hissed. "Exactly what I said," Grandpa replied. "I gave Tiffany the company for her 18th birthday. All decisions about its future and finances are hers to make now." The shock on Mom's face quickly gave way to a simpering smile as she turned to me. "Tiffany, sweetie, I've missed you so much. Why don't you come live with us? We settled in so well in the new city." I blinked, taken aback by her sudden change in demeanor. "We have a lovely house," she continued, her voice honey-sweet. "There's a big bedroom just for you, with plenty of space for a desk and computer. You could study and work from home. Wouldn't that be nice?" I felt a twinge in my chest. Part of me, the part that still longed for my mom's approval, wanted to say yes. But then I thought of everything I'd learned, everything I'd built here. "Thanks, Mom, but no," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I'm happy here. I have my friends, my life, and Grandpa. Besides, I start college soon." The tension in the room was palpable as I stood my ground against Mom's manipulations. Her sweet demeanor quickly soured when she realized I wasn't going to be swayed. "Fine," she snapped, her voice losing its sugary coating. "If you won't come to us, we'll move back here. We can all live in our old house, just like before. Wouldn't that be nice, Tiffany?" I shook my head, feeling a strange mix of sadness and determination. "No, Mom, that's not going to happen either." I could see the anger building in her eyes, her facade crumbling rapidly. It was now or never. "Mom," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "I want you to tell me the truth. What really happened between you and Dad? Why did you really get divorced?" For a split second, confusion flashed across Mom's face. Then, as if on cue, tears welled up in her eyes. "Oh, Tiffany," she sobbed. "Your father, he was so cruel. He insulted me. He even hit me. I had to leave to protect myself, to protect you and Tommy." I felt a surge of anger at her lies. "Stop it, Mom. I know what really happened. I know you framed Dad. You set him up so you could divorce him and take everything for yourself." The tears vanished from Mom's eyes in an instant, replaced by a cold fury I'd never seen before. "How dare you?" she hissed. "You ungrateful child. You have no right to meddle in my personal life." She turned to Grandpa, her voice rising. "Everything here belongs to me. I decide who lives where and who gets what." Then she rounded on me again. "You will come home right now, Tiffany, and you will hand over that company to me where it belongs." I stood there, shocked by the venom in her voice, when Grandpa stepped forward. His face was a storm of disappointment and anger. "That's enough, Sarah," he said, his voice low but powerful. "You seem to have forgotten a few important details. This property, including your old house, belongs to me, not you. And the company now belongs to Tiffany. I gave it to her, and it's hers to do with as she sees fit." Mom's face went pale, then red with rage. She opened her mouth to argue, but Grandpa cut her off. "I've heard enough," he said firmly. "I'm ashamed of you, Sarah. I raised you better than this. Now I think it's time for you and Robert to leave. You can't kick us out." Mom shrieked. "I'm your daughter." Grandpa's expression was stone. "And Tiffany is my granddaughter. A granddaughter who has shown more integrity and strength in the past few months than you have in years. Now leave, both of you." I watched a mix of emotions swirling inside me as Grandpa ushered Mom and Robert to the door. Mom's face was a mask of fury and disbelief as the door closed behind them. As the sound of their car engine faded away, I sank onto the couch, feeling drained. Grandpa sat beside me, putting a comforting arm around my shoulders. As we sat there in silence, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. The confrontation with Mom had been explosive, but somehow I knew it wasn't over. This was just the beginning of a new chapter in our complicated family saga. The morning after Mom and Robert's dramatic exit, I woke to the sound of hushed voices downstairs. Curiosity getting the better of me, I crept down to find Grandpa and Dad in deep conversation in the study. "Tiffany," Dad said, noticing me first, "come in, sweetheart." We were just talking about you and Tommy when I entered the room, my confusion evident. "What about Tommy?" Grandpa cleared his throat. "I've asked your father if he'd be willing to seek custody of Tommy." My eyes widened. Really? But how? Dad nodded, a mix of determination and hope in his eyes. "Your grandfather thinks we have a strong case, especially with what he's discovered." Grandpa reached for a thick folder on his desk. "Tiffany, sit down. There's something you need to see." With trembling hands, I opened the folder. Inside was a detailed report from a private investigator. As I read, I felt my world tilt on its axis once again. "Mom was cheating on you." I looked at Dad, horrified. "With Robert for years," Dad nodded grimly. "It seems so." Grandpa pointed to several documents, hotel receipts, gift records, old text messages. "Your mother and Robert had been carrying on an affair long before the divorce." "But how did the investigator get all this information?" I asked, bewildered. Grandpa's eyes narrowed. Robert made a crucial mistake. He threw away his old phone when he bought a new one. Our investigator managed to recover it, and it was a goldmine of information. I felt sick. But why all the theatrics with the divorce then? Why accuse Dad of abuse? "It was Robert's idea," Grandpa explained, his voice heavy. "According to their messages on that old phone, he suggested she frame your father for domestic violence. It was all a ploy to ensure she got everything in the divorce." Tears stung my eyes, but Grandpa wasn't finished. "There's more," he said, turning to another section of the report. "That same phone revealed Robert's true nature. He's not who he claims to be. He's a con man, Tiffany. The phone had messages with other women. He targets wealthy women, marries them, and then disappears with their money." The pieces suddenly fell into place. That's why he was so keen on moving the company and transferring all the capital. I gasped. He was planning to steal it all along. Grandpa nodded gravely. "Exactly. And there's one more thing you should know. I met with your mother and showed her all this evidence, but she refused to believe it. She's in deep denial about Robert's true nature and his intentions." I sat back, my mind reeling. What do we do now? "We fight," Dad said firmly. "For Tommy, for the company, for the truth." Grandpa nodded in agreement. "I've already called my lawyer. We're going to file for custody of Tommy and take steps to protect the company's assets." The next few months were a whirlwind of legal battles and emotional turmoil. Dad fought tirelessly for custody of Tommy. I stood by them every step of the way, determined to bring my little brother home. The courtroom was tense as Mom tried to paint Dad as a monster, spinning tales of abuse and neglect. But her lies crumbled in the face of the mountain of evidence we had gathered. The judge listened intently as our lawyer presented the detective's findings, the recovered phone messages, the proof of Mom's affair, and the elaborate scheme she and Robert had concocted to frame Dad. I will never forget the expression on Mom's face when Dad was given full custody by the judge. It was a mixture of surprise, rage, and something else entirely. Maybe the first glimmer of recognition that her meticulously built world was coming apart. Not long afterward came the last blow. Robert revealed his true colors when he realized that Mom was now alone, without a place to live, and responsible for paying child support. Overnight, he vanished, taking off with another lady, leaving Mom with nothing but the fallout from her deeds. Mom made a frantic attempt to make amends with Dad. She came back to our old house, our home, and I was there, tears running down her cheeks as she pleaded for forgiveness. Dad, though, did not waver. With a firm voice, he apologized to Sarah. However, too much has transpired. You have my whole faith. Kindly depart. I felt a chapter of our life closing as the door closed on Mom's beseeching face. It was agonizing, yet liberating in an odd way. After then, life found its new rhythm. I immersed myself into my undergraduate coursework with the goal of becoming an expert in business management. I would devour corporate reports with my father in between lectures, learning from his wealth of experience and expertise. In order to give me time to learn the ropes without the strain of complete responsibility, he volunteered to operate the business until I graduated. Tommy flourished under Dad's care, even though he was still too little to properly comprehend everything that had transpired. Seeing them mend their connection was heartening. I saw the joy in Tommy's eyes when his father got home from work, or when we spent Friday evenings playing board games together. Being only a few blocks away, Grandpa was someone we visited frequently. Sunday meals developed into a much-loved custom. We were all four seated around his large oak table, laughing and telling each other tales. Grandpa would enthrall us with stories of his early years of founding the business, his eyes sparkling as he observed me taking in every nuance. I can't help but notice how much has changed as I sit here in my childhood bedroom, which seems like home again. We came to this point via a difficult and terrible journey filled with betrayals and harsh realities. However, it also resulted in the reconstruction of a family that was closer and stronger than before. I am aware that difficulties are ahead. It takes a lot of work to run a business, and our family turmoil will probably continue to have an impact for years to come. However, I'm not scared. At my side are Dad, Tommy, and Grandpa, and I feel prepared for whatever is ahead.